Hello everyone, and welcome to the Advanced Strings lecture. So string objects have a variety of methods we can use to save time and add functionality. And what we're going to do is explore some of them in this lecture. So let's go ahead and create a string called Hello World. And let's explore some different methods we can use. So let's start with changing case. So we can change cases to upper and lower case, and there's a couple methods we can use. One of them is the capitalize method, and what the capitalize method does is it capitalizes the first word in a string. We can also use the upper method, which you may have seen before, to uppercase every letter in a string, and then we can also use the lower to lowercase every letter in a string. There's also location and counting methods. So if I wanted to, for instance, count how many O's there are in a string, I can use the count method, and I can also find them. So I can say find the first occurrence of an O, and it'll return the index where that happens. There's also formatting methods, and these are a little strange and they're also not used that often, but it still might be good to know them in case you ever run into them. First one we're going to talk about is the center method. So let's go ahead and check our string. It's still just hello world since we lowercased it again. And what the center method does is it allows you to place your string centered between a provided string with a certain length. So these are pretty esoteric, and I've actually never seen this used in code, but it's still a method you can use. So for instance, let's say you wanted to center your string hello world between a bunch of z's, and you wanted the total length of that string to be 20. Then this is what it would look like. So we centered hello world between z's, and the total length of the string is 20. Okay, there may not be too many use cases for that, and I've personally actually have never used it. This method that you may or may not use is the expand tabs method. So for instance, if I say hello t, and that will break it to a tab. Whoops. Let me make sure this is working. So this backslash t, when you print it, it will be an escape character for a tab. So it'll actually read hello tab hi. So this is going to be useful if you ever find yourself parsing through a lot of text data. And instead of having to print it, what you can actually do is just call the expand tabs method, and it will do the same thing. Again, not used that often. Let's go ahead and check out some other methods that check if the string is some sort of case. So for instance, I'm going to set a string just called hello, and there's a method called isAlnum, and this checks if all the characters in S are alphanumeric, and in this case it's true. And what we can also do is just check if they're all alphabetic. So numeric doesn't count anymore. So we can just check is alpha, and that's also true. These are actually quite useful, and I have seen them used a lot, especially if you find yourself doing some sort of natural language processing techniques. Another couple of ways, or a couple methods we can use is lower, and this will return true if all case characters in S are lowercase, and if there's at least one case character in S. We can also check is space, and it will return true if all characters in S are white space. In this case, that's not the case, so it should return false. So is space, which will return true if all characters in S are white space. It's false since we have letters in there. Another method called is title. So we can check is title, and what that does, it'll only return true if S is a title case string, and there's at least one character in S. So uppercase characters may only follow uncased characters, and lowercase characters only follow cased ones. Another method is upper, and that will return true if all cased characters in S are uppercase. So is upper. This case it's false, but if I were to say let's say hello, all uppercase, and then I asked is upper on that, then that is true. All right. One last method for checking cases is ends with. So I could check s.ends with, and let's say I wanted to verify that it ends with O. Yeah, and this is basically the same thing as just doing this, right? Checking if that last character in the string is equal to something, and it returns a Boolean. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some built-in regular expression operations. So strings have some built-in methods that can resemble full-on regular expressions operations, and one of them that's really commonly used is split. And we can use split to split the string at a certain element and return a list of the results. So let's check our string, which is hello. And let's say we wanted to split the string at E. Then split will return the result in a list, so everything before that E, and then everything after it. And remember, it only separates at the first occurrence. Excuse me, it'll actually separate at every occurrence of E. So just to make that clear, I'll show you an example. So if I have a string that's looks something like this, I could say splits at I, and it'll split it up at every instance of that I. Okay, there's also partition, which is pretty similar to split, but in this case, what partition does is it'll have the head, the sep, and the tail. So what it'll do is it will search for the separator, whichever you feed it in the argument, in S, that string, and return the part before it, the separator itself, and the part after it. And if the separator is not found, it returns S and two empty strings. So for instance, if I said partition of I here, this one is at the first instance of I, or whatever separator you put in. So it'll give you the first part, the separator, and then everything else that happened after it. So unlike split, which splits at every instance, partition will only do it at the first instance, and it will also return the separator in the middle. So the front, separator, and the back. Okay, so that's it as far as the lecture and strings. Let's just go ahead and do a quick review. A lot of these were Boolean checks, so I know that was kind of hard to keep track of. It's probably better just to read along in Jupyter notebooks. But we went over methods for changing case, such as capitalize upper and lower. We looked at location and counting, such as count and find. We looked at a few esoteric formatting ones, such as center, also expand tabs. And then is check methods, so all the tons of methods to check if the string is in some case, such as is alnum, is alpha, is lower, is space, is title, is upper, and ends with. And then we looked at some built-in regular expressions, such as splits and partition. Okay, so you should feel comfortable using the variety of methods that are built into string objects, and you should definitely feel comfortable if you run into them when you're reading someone else's code. All right, that's it for the Advanced Strings lecture. Thanks, I'll see you at the next one.